Welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Billy, teacher, tutor, and manager of the Ask team here at LSAT Demon. And joining me today is Jackson McKillop, a teacher, tutor, and Ask Button writer at LSAT Demon. How's it going today, Jackson?
Billy, I'm so excited to be here. I've been listening to the podcast for a year now, so to actually be on an episode is awesome. Glad I get to do it with you, and I really am excited about the topic that we get to talk about.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? We've both been longtime listeners to this podcast, and now we have fully taken it over. No Josh, no Ben, no Nate, just us. Full control. We can say whatever we want. But today we're going to be focusing on how to most effectively use the Ask button. Like I mentioned, I'm the manager of the Ask Button team at LSAT Demon. Jackson is one of our most active Ask Button writers. I'm sure if you've used the Ask button at LSAT Demon, you've received responses from Jackson. So yeah, today we're talking about how to most effectively use it. I think it is one of the most valuable and perhaps most underappreciated parts of LSAT Demon, and we want to make sure that people are getting the most out of the Ask button. So today we're going to cover what is the Ask button, again, what makes the most effective Ask button question, what makes an ineffective question, and we're going to share some tips from our team as well about how to craft more effective Ask button questions. So today, first, we wanted to get into what is the Ask button. In case you're not familiar, maybe you're not a Demon student yet, the Ask button is a button you can press to, of course, ask any question you would like, whether it is about a test question, whether it's about one of our lessons on the website, one of our classes, any feature of our website, the Ask button is there. So when you're reviewing a question, you've gone over our written explanation, you've reviewed our video explanations, and something still isn't quite clicking with you, or you wanted something clarified, and you were really digging into it and you just couldn't figure it out yourself, our team of tutors is there to help you at any time. We have a team of professional writers as well as students who answer your questions on the Ask button, and we're here to answer any question that you have. So let's get into it. Jackson, what do you think makes an effective Ask button question? What are the basics of that? And conversely, what might make for an ineffective question on the Ask button?
Billy, I like that you asked that question because the most important thing to me about writing an effective question for the ask button is understanding where the ask button as an entity exists in the process of reviewing a question. So we're talking about the ask button, we're talking about how to use it, how to get answers, what we like to see. But really, this is also a great way for students to know how to review these questions because step one is understanding the ask button is actually the last, is sort of step three, if you want to call it that, of the review process. You're going to answer a question, you're going to complete your section, whatever. You will look at a wrong answer. And if you want to write a good ask button question, you better read the written explanation we provided. We have a great team of writers writing those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, After that, I like to start with the written explanation. That's my preference. Some people like to start with the video. I'll go to the video next. I like to hear a teacher reading the passage out loud. That's always helpful to me. Once you've pinpointed something in there that isn't clicking for you, now it's the time to write a ticket that someone like me and our other writers are really going to appreciate because we really enjoy a good question because a lot of times it will involve a back and forth conversation and we want it to, and it'll be helpful for us, it'll be helpful for the student if they bring up a great point about our written explanation and we get to expand on it and then come back to them. And there are times where we're almost looking forward to a follow-up being like, oh yeah, this really helped, or wait, I'm still confused about this. A lot of us, we like to always end our responses to students with a, hey, please write back if you have more questions.
Yeah.
And we really mean it. We really do. We want to help. A, we want to help you. B, we just enjoy the process of talking about these questions and learning
Mhm.
more about the
Yeah.
LSAT.
And I think
So
what you're, sorry to cut you off, but I think something I really wanted to, focus on there and something that you're highlighting and what you're saying is that an ask button question isn't meant to replace your deep engagement with the passage. Maybe you're confused and you're like, okay, I'll just throw it to a tutor and they can explain it to me. One, when you ask a question that's general like that and you haven't really dug into what you don't really understand, it's going to be hard for us to provide a useful answer to you. But really, what you're trying to do on the ask button is not, you know, replace that deep engagement, but it's the final step at the end of your deep engagement. You've really dug into this question. Maybe you're thinking about what question you even want to ask when you know, you open up that ask button tab. You've really dug in. You're thinking like, okay, what don't I understand? Sometimes you'll figure it out yourself, but sometimes you'll really pinpoint like, okay, it's that specific thing that I don't understand. That helps us to help you. When you have a really specific question that comes at the end of that deep engagement, as opposed to saying, well, I can ask a tutor to do it for me, that's when you're going to get the most out of the ask button. So conversely, Jackson, what makes for an ineffective ask button question?
An ineffective ask button question. I want to preface this by saying, by no means do we want people to avoid using the
Yeah, of
ask button. I think
course.
sometimes a lot of students will say they'll lead their questions with something like "Sorry to bother you," "Sorry to do this," "Sorry
Mhm.
whatever." I and many of us would disagree with that. Just saying that
Mhm.
at all because we want you to use the button, we want you to ask questions, and so
Mhm.
I don't think people should be shy about using it. You're asking a group of people who are happy to sit at their computer and read what you have to say about this
Yeah.
question, about the explanation, about anything with regards to it. So, with that, an ineffective question, one that we as writers have a little bit more trouble with, is going off of what you were talking about, making the most out of it with that deep engagement when your question does not include any insight into what your deep engagement consisted of. It
Mhm.
becomes very difficult for us to guess, because I mean, we would like to give you an in-depth response that's going to help you and give you something to build on moving forward. If the question you write to us is, something along the lines of why is the answer B, we don't get to really engage as much with what we think about the test. We're more so having to go back to the explanation and be like, well, now I'm going to guess what they didn't understand about this explanation. And so we really like to see the deep engagement that you were talking about. Like, really, you were working with the passage, you were working with our explanations, and you want to know more about this because we want to tell you more about it. We just don't want to have to guess. That makes sense.
Mhm.
We don't want to guess
Yeah.
where we're going at.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ask button, it presents this unique opportunity. We write written explanations, we have recorded explanations for every question, and we generally explain the question. We go over every answer choice, we explain our thinking, how to form a good prediction on the question. This is your chance to ask for like a customized, specific explanation. If you're just asking a general question like, hey, why is answer B wrong? We're going to be like, hey, we wrote that. It's in the written explanation. It's in the, recorded explanation, and it feels like a missed opportunity. We want you asking more questions. We want you asking more specific questions as well. So it's not that we don't want you using the ask button, it's that we want you using it effectively, writing specific, targeted questions. Also, if you can highlight, you know, maybe if it's an RC passage, like where specifically in the text you're not understanding, or what your thought process was in reaching the wrong answer. um, you know if you search for maybe the textual support to the RC question that you're not understanding, and you're trying to find like what is the disconnect in my thinking here, if you can highlight that specifically, that's where we can give you that customized response that's best going to help you. So this is a really cool tool for you to be using, but if you're not using it effectively, really, we're just going to be repeating ourselves, repeating those explanations that you already have access to, and you're not getting the most out of the website. And like Jackson said, we are nerds. We love doing this. We get paid to do this. Ask more questions, like I like working, I like making money, I love the LSAT. So just ask as many as you want to. But just make sure that you're getting the most out of your time in asking that question. Because if you ask that general question and your response comes back with something that we've basically already said in the written explanation, you wasted your time. We spent time that maybe we could have been using to answer a more specific question for you, and everybody wins in that scenario. Now, we asked a similar question, what makes an effective response, what makes an ineffective response, to our team today, because we wanted a little bit more insight. And of course, we got a lot of responses. People have very strong views about what makes the best ask button questions and what maybe holds some back from being effective questions. Jackson, did you see any in our Slack channel chat today that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, I thought we had a bunch of great responses from the team. I am looking at Nate C's response right here. He said, proofreading for clarity before hitting send so that you don't get a sorry, I didn't understand your question. Can you clarify from us when you're waiting for a more substantial reply? I think this was a good one because a lot of times we don't want to be guessing at what you, the student, wasn't quite understanding. And it makes sense for us to dive a little deeper and have to ask again. And especially with our, we
Hmm.
turn around those questions in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So you don't want your turn in that queue in that 24-hour turnaround to be a can you please clarify this? So I think
Mhm.
checking, making sure you're asking about the right answer choice that you mean to. A lot of times people mistype and they'll be
Mhm.
referring to one answer choice the whole time. But if you accidentally put B instead of A,
Yeah.
now I've
Yeah.
completely lost which one we're supposed to be talking about. So definitely, proofreading so that when you get the turnaround on that question you ask, we can give you a substantial reply, something
Yeah.
with meaning, as opposed to asking a follow-up question.
Yeah, and it's a test of very precise language. And so this isn't just about typos or maybe use the wrong punctuation. Like if you make a punctuation error, it's fine. We can see past it.
Yeah.
Proofreading is always good. It's easier for the person reading it, but slight error like that's not the end of the world. But you want to make sure that you are being very exact and precise and clear in exactly what is unclear, exactly what you're thinking. Because if you're I don't know, vague about that, or you're inaccurate in exactly how you're thinking about it. When we're trying to answer your very specific question about this very precisely worded passage and question, there can be a miscommunication there. So yeah, I definitely agree on that. Um, and another one I wanted to highlight is from Isabella. She said, don't spend your time arguing with the test itself. These questions have been carefully vetted. Your job is to focus on where your own reasoning went wrong and how you can avoid making the same mistake again. I love that point. As someone who has spent I've been working as an LSAT teacher for a year now. So, like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, just doing that. Plus, I spent months and months studying, and I studied like full time when I was doing it. I spent so much time with this test that I have encountered questions where I'm like, that can't be right. I need to argue with this. And every single time I do that, I end up being proven wrong. It's a waste of my time if I try to argue with this test. These have been carefully vetted. They have long, rigorous quality control processes before they're ever released into tests. They're released on experimental sections of tests to even, make sure they know not just that they are accurate, but that they know exactly how hard these are, for students to find the right answer. So these are perfect questions. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner that you're going to get the most out of your review process. If you get a question wrong, you did something wrong. Well, you did two things wrong. One, you picked the wrong answer and you eliminated the correct answer. Those are two things that you need to work through and really dig into. Why did you make those mistakes? If you spend your time saying, but answer B could be correct, right? Because, for this reason, you're not really digging into what you did wrong. Rather, you're defending yourself. This test will humble us. Some of these questions are kind of difficult, or at least for a while they can be difficult until we, study enough and learn the patterns, the idiosyncrasies of this test. So yeah, when I accepted that for the first time, that's when my review became much more effective, and that's when your ask button questions are gonna become a lot more effective as well, because you're gonna be asking us the right things. Why am I wrong? Where did I go wrong? Why is this the case? Not I'm right, right? Prove me wrong. That is not the best way to approach this.
Yeah, I think what you bring up there segues nicely into the next team member comment that I was looking at from Evan. He mentioned the questions that we sometimes get where a student will, and I get it. First of all, like
Mhm.
I get it. We want
Yeah,
to, you said it, we want to argue with certain questions. We want to argue with
yeah,
answer choices. We also want to try and validate where our thinking might have been. And so it's
yeah.
only natural that when you get a question wrong, 90 plus percent of the time, it's probably because you misread something. You
Mhm.
misread the passage, you misread the answer choice. But sometimes we want to know if our misreading would have been correct in some circumstance.
Yeah.
And so I always understand it when I see people ask a question like, but if B had been worded this way, or
Yeah.
if A had actually said this, would it have been the right answer? And I know that sometimes people aren't satisfied with my reply, but I really engage with the idea of these hypotheticals are not going to help you solve the question and understand what you're looking for in order to get
Mhm.
better at the test and best utilize this resource. I tell a lot of students the each question, and like you talked about, going through so much quality control to even appear on your
Yeah.
screen right now. So if you're arguing with that part
Mhm.
and on top of that creating a new answer choice, it's like making a puzzle. It's like you have a puzzle. Each of these
Mhm.
questions is a carefully created puzzle, and
Mhm.
when we change an answer choice, we're changing a piece of the puzzle to where it doesn't fit in this question anymore. And now
Yeah.
we've got a different answer and a different idea of the question. And the LSAT, along with being a puzzle, the LSAT's a playbook. There's only so
Yeah.
many plays they're going to throw at you. There's only so many things you're going to see. And so when we're changing the playbook, we're changing what play they want to run on this question. And
Mhm.
now we've got a completely different thing we're talking about. And I have trouble
Yeah.
engaging with the hypothetical for the student.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's such a good point from Evan. Um, you know, when students write questions like that, they'll say, "Okay, if I added this assumption to answer B, could that be the correct answer?" I think that's a sign that they're engaging with these answer choices fundamentally wrong. We want you to be attacking these answers and asking yourself, what are the holes in this? How can I, find a way to eliminate this? Because as Nate always says, 80% of answer choices are wrong. So our assumption going into every answer is that it's wrong. We're trying to eliminate it. I think when students are trying to ask, well, what slight thing could I change for it to be correct? That comes from a place of you advocating for answers. Maybe you had added that assumption to it yourself and you got the question wrong for that reason. That's a sign if you're asking yourself a question like that and you're tempted to ask that on the ask button, it's a sign that you need to fundamentally shift your approach to these answer choices. You're finding reasons that they're wrong, not thinking, well, how could I bend it to be right? If you're thinking like that, you're not reviewing as effectively as you could be.
Yeah, that's a great point and timely because that's not something that's new to only students at the beginning of their journey. I think you and I were working last week, and I was working on questions with you, and I was talking through them. And then you
Mhm.
literally told me exactly what you just said. You were like,
Mhm.
you're helping answer choices too much. You're bending them to potentially make them work, when in reality, it's got to flip to the other side. The burden of proof is on the answer choice to show you
Mhm.
that it's right. By
Mhm.
becoming a master of the passage, by understanding what the author's saying, the correct answer will prove itself to you using what you read in the passage. So, um, that one hits home because I had to be told it just last week. So it applies to
Yeah.
everybody.
We always have to remind ourselves, right? Because when we get a question wrong, or I don't know, we almost got a question wrong, we were tempted by an answer choice. A lot of that comes from us saying, like, well, it looks good. I have this slight objection. It's imperfect for this little reason, but largely it looks good. That little reason is why it's wrong. We need to focus on that. And I see a lot of ask button questions coming from the place of, well, it was so good. It's just that little thing. And our response is going to be, yeah, that reason there, that little thing that you thought was only a slight issue or that you could overlook, that's what's wrong with the answer choice. So yeah, we always have to remind ourselves of that, even as people who do this every single day. Something else I wanted to highlight in this podcast episode is how you become a member of the team. There are a lot of Ask Button heroes on our team. What is an Ask Hero? They're actually students with LSAT Demon right now who are studying for the test just like you. They're students who have scored a 170 and above. And when you score, I think you have to score two practice tests above 170 or 170 or above, you'll get a notification inviting you to apply to be an Ask Button hero. And what you can do, if you effectively respond to those questions, we accept your application, we bring you onto the team, is you answer questions on the Ask button for 4 hours every week, and you get a free live subscription for doing that. So if you're a good writer and you're really good at the LSAT and you're still studying for this test, you can get a free live account. You can answer students' questions. So if you ask questions on the Ask button, some of those responses are going to come from people who are in the 170s, maybe trying to make that push into the high 170s. And yeah, they're still studying for the test just like you. If you go to live classes, you might actually see them in class as well. So how do you become one of them? Just like I said, you can apply. We also have paid writers on our team. If you have an official 170, you can apply. I believe it's lsat.link/apply, and you can fill out that application. Uh, I love working at LSAT Demon. I don't know about you, Jackson, but it's a great job. So if you have your official 170, we definitely invite you to come on the team. We're really happy at how fast the ask button is growing. I don't know if you've noticed this, Jackson. The queue every month, every week is getting busier and busier. I think back in June, we got like 2,000 questions a week. Now it's over 3,000 questions a week, just in a couple months. Leading up to these October and November tests, which have tons of registrants, we're expecting even more. And we're really excited about that. And we would love to bring on more help. And the reason I want to highlight that in this podcast, where we're just trying to tell you how to use the ask button most effectively, is if you're at that stage where you're scoring above 170, one, you can still get a lot out of asking questions on the ask button, but you can also get a ton out of writing responses on the ask button. Like Jackson and I said, we really enjoy this. And part of the reason that we enjoy this is we learn something new every day by answering ask button questions. If you ask an insightful question, we'll think, wow, I wouldn't have thought of it from that angle. Or wow, that's a detail that yeah, I wouldn't have thought of. And we'll learn something new from your questions. And also, it's a challenge, you know, like maybe it won't click right away for us, but by working through your questions, we'll learn something new about the test. So even though I stopped studying for this test 4 years ago and I became a teacher over a year ago, I am so much better at this test now than I was when I was studying because I actually have to answer students' questions. So if you're in your study process, if you just have practice test scores above 170 and you want to become an Ask Button hero, do it because it's like having, 1,000 study buddies where they're asking interesting questions and forcing you to engage with the test in a way that's going to really help you to improve. And if you have a score above 170, definitely apply. Even if you're going to retake the test again, apply now because you're going to get so much out of answering Ask Button questions. Jackson, do you have any thoughts about answering Ask Button questions, working for LSAT Demon, ways that have helped you?
Oh, I think you covered honestly the best pitch you could make to a student who might want to be an Ask Button hero. I mean, we we're not here to advertise everything, but getting a live subscription and on top of that, being able to continue studying for the test in a super effective way. The people that have been on board at the same time as me, I've been here for about 5 months now. I talked to them about, how's the job been for you so far? And everybody says, I'm just better at the test now. We may have put time sections to the side in favor of answering students' questions, but there's an argument to be made. It is such an effective and unique way of studying for the test. And I couldn't recommend it enough to anyone getting ready for the test who wants to keep improving their score. Especially if you're in the 170s. I mean, this is just constant great dialogue about the LSAT. And in terms of coming to work here, if you have a 170 plus, for me it was a no-brainer for me. I was like, if I got the number, I'm applying the next day. I think it's such a cool job to be able to talk to people, especially with what our platform offers in terms of making the LSAT, making it easier, making an easy test. I want to help more people see that it's possible to make the jump from 140s to 170. Like there's anything is achievable with the mindset that we provide to students. And so I it's a great job, Billy. It's a great job.
Hmm.
We get to talk to students. We get to meet with
Hmm.
them on Zoom in the Ask button. It's a great time. Couldn't recommend it enough to anybody. So please come apply, come work with us. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, on that high level, this episode is about how to effectively use the ask button. Yeah, part of that is asking questions, but over time, when you get good enough, using the ask button is responding to questions, and that's when you can really become a master of this test. So if you're early on in your journey, utilize the ask button the way we described today, ask specific, targeted questions, really dig into your mistakes and think, what exactly don't I understand? Later on in your journey, if you're ready to actually answer questions, that's how you make that final push into the high 170s. So the ask button, any stage of your journey, it's going to be really helpful for you. Any final thoughts, Jackson, before we wrap up?
No, I think we did a good job. I think this
Oh, we
was
killed it today.
huge for us to
We
finally get to make
yeah,
it on and host this together. We've been working a good bit on managing our Ask Button team and
yeah.
keeping everybody in line, keeping the queue under control. So the fact that we get to, get back in front of a camera and talk
Mhm.
about that experience is awesome. And I hope our listeners enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, we should definitely be the full-time host. We'll have to talk to Ben and Nate and Josh about that. But for
For
now,
sure.
enjoy this episode. And if you have any questions for us or that you want featured on the podcast, email daily@lsatdemon.com. Thanks for listening.